you're still on the side. Just a little bit as if, a little bit more than that would be great.
Yeah.
Da-da-da.
Alright, welcome everyone to this first episode of this thing with me and Lewis Kennedy. How are you doing, Lewis?
I'm doing very well. How are you, Eivind?
I'm really good. I'm super excited for this. This project that we're going to talk about right now, I think. Lewis, I'm wondering, could you explain, what are we trying to do with this episode and also the coming episodes?
So, this first started off as just a podcast. I wanted to make a juggling podcast. Eivind wanted to make a juggling podcast. So that we would discuss it, let's make a podcast together. And both of us, actually, we didn't want to just make a podcast on a certain juggler. We wanted to make a podcast on a certain topic within juggling. And we wanted to get special people, special guests who specialised in this juggling topic that we thought about, or the world thought about. But then it got a little bit more than a podcast, didn't it? We got a bit excited, and do you want to explain the rest of it?
The rest of it, so it's basically going to start off usually with me and Lewis just discussing different things within the juggling world and sometimes what has happened recently. And then we go into the main video, which we have created beforehand, and it's going to be really edited and really deep down into one particular topic with maybe one person or multiple people. And after that, we're going to invite some people as special guests to this podcast, video, TV show thingy, so that we can discuss this topic that we just saw in that video. I think that's it, right? Yeah.
I think that's it.
Awesome. But one thing, Lewis, because I'm not sure if people know you, I'm not sure if people know me, so I would like to introduce you. So, for all of you guys that don't know him, Lewis Kennedy, he's an amazing guy. His personality is it's there. So, he's always smiling, always laughing. He has a big heart for everyone, and also especially the juggling community. So, in terms of juggling particularly, Lewis is known for his amazing tricks with his head bounce, also with balancing some super short stuff, and also a lot of tricks with ones. And ones is basically that you just pass a ball to the other hand and just figuring out all of these different combinations. And also, he's a side swap genius, and side swaps are basically, if you know about notes for music, side swaps is basically just tons of different numbers that explains how we throw things within juggling. So it's basically our notes for our juggling. And he's a genius with this to figure out all the different combinations. He's from the UK, but also Scotland. First Scotland, and now he lives in the UK. Yeah, I think I've said at least quite a bit. And he also has a lot of special vocabulary, so you need to learn a lot of Lewis-specific words. But I think you're going to manage it in some few episodes, I guess.
If I paid Eivind £1,000 to say that, saying such nice things about me, and now I'm a little bit nervous because I don't know what I'm going to say about him. So, let me talk about how amazing you are, Eivind. So, you hold the world record for the most clubs, balls and rings combined together, flashed-wise.
Yeah, correct.
Correct me if I'm wrong, that is 12 balls, 9 clubs and 11 rings.
Yes, that is correct.
Hopefully soon, I don't think you're working on it, but you're going to get 12 rings, aren't you?
Yeah, I really hope to get it just once in my lifetime. That's sufficient. Yeah, if I get it once, I'll be so happy.
And pen clubs.
Yeah, that's for another episode.
That's maybe episode 1,000,005. Eivind, I also actually met Eivind, Norwegian Convention 2011.
I think so, yeah.
I don't know how old he would have been, but he was this tiny. He was really, maybe not that small, obviously. Maybe here to the ground. And the clubs were, not that much smaller than him. And he was doing a 5 club, 5 up, 2-stage 720, and I remember thinking, this kid, I remember thinking that. I don't think I spoke to you though, did I?
Yeah, we spoke together.
Did we speak? Okay, I just remember you being completely insane and being excited to see what you were going to do in the future. Eivind has also set up the Numbers League with Tom Whitfield, which has been an absolute mega hit in the juggling community. And you also started the Juggling News of the Month?
Yeah, correct. I did it in 2020, did I? No, maybe 2021, I think. Yeah, I started it, yeah.
If you watch Eivind's videos from a YouTube channel, he goes so into depth. I've never met anyone who is so interested in the technique and the mechanics of juggling. And I think is that correct?
Yeah, I would say so. And I really think that we're going to see the same for some of these future episodes as well.
So, yeah, I think that wraps up Eivind, Dragsjö Rumbon, whatever your second name is.
Thank you. Yeah, Dragsjö, it was really good. I think that's the best you've ever pronounced it, Lewis. Yeah, that was really good, the Dragsjö. Yeah, that's my name. Amazing. So, when I introduced this thingy, as we have called it many times now in the beginning of the episode, the reason why I didn't call it anything specific is because we don't really know what we're going to call it yet. If it's going to be a video podcast, a TV juggling show, or whatever. And also, we don't really have a name yet. So, Lewis, we have come up with a plan to find out a name for this thing. Could you explain that to us?
I will explain it. So, we don't know what to call it. So, we want to incorporate as many jugglers in on this project as physically possible. We don't want it just to be me and Eivind. We want everyone to be included. So, we were wondering if you, the audience, can think of a name that we can call this thing. Okay? If you guys can send in your name, we are going to have an Instagram account, aren't we? So, you could maybe... how should they vote? How should they put their names forward?
I think they could both just write it as a comment on YouTube. If they struggle with finding the new Instagram, which we haven't made yet, but we're going to make, then you can send a DM to me, or of course a DM to the Instagram we're going to make quite soon. And we're also going to link those. We're going to link that Instagram in the description of this video on YouTube, so it's going to be easy for you guys to find it. And please, just if there's any questions that you want us to discuss in the podcast, if there's anything you're wondering about, if you have a suggestion for the name, or if it's a specific episode that you want us to make sometime, just send us a message, just comment it, let other people know and let us know. We're going to read everything. And we would really appreciate it if this became a community thing and not just a Lewis and Eivind thing.
So yes, so if you guys send in what could possibly be the name for whatever this is, and then we will decide which name we like the most, and whoever's name we pick, you're going to receive an award, a prize. Do you want to express what this prize is?
Yes, so I got in touch with Play Juggling, and during this year's EJC, we're going to get one club from Play. We don't quite know the color combination yet, but anyways, we're going to get that club, and we're going to try and get as many famous jugglers as possible to sign this club. And the guy that has written the name that we end up using for this thing that we're making is going to be given this juggling club with all of the different signatures. So that's the plan, and that's the prize.
So please put down your names, win the world's best club in the whole world, and then let's see what happens next.
Yeah. Okay, Lewis. So I'm not sure because you're not that much on social media anymore. So I'm not sure if you've seen all of these things that I'm going to mention, but every episode we're going to have something called Golden Nuggets, which are basically things that I have found in the juggling world the last last month, last weeks, something like that, that really has made an impression on me. So, the first two guys that I want to mention are two young jugglers, Kumiken from Japan and Siler Buckner from the United States. Kumiken, he just became the youngest juggler in the world to juggle 11 balls, but not just the youngest, but also first. And let me explain. Because you have juggling balls, which is kind of, it's something round, you juggle it, it's just a ball. But then we have something called juggling bean bags. So it's a juggling ball, but it's squishy, And that's basically what almost all jugglers uses when they juggle, for example, 10 balls and more. But Kumiken used a hard shell plastic ball when he actually juggled 11 balls. So now he's the first juggler to ever do 11 balls and not 11 beanbags. And Siler Buckner, he just did 23 catches of 11 balls. So he actually did a qualify more than that, which is twice the amount of throws and catches as the amount of objects that he's juggling. And he also did 17 throws of 12 balls, which I just think is absurd, especially for that age. And what else do we have? We also have Tom Whitfield, who we are actually going to have this video be about. And he did 20 catches of 12 balls in async, which is a world record in itself in the async pattern, but also a tied world record for just the maximum amount of catches, tied with Alex Barron. And he also did something just completely insane, which I know that you saw, Lewis, and that is 51 catches of 10 balls.
Completely insane. I don't understand how someone can maintain maintenance of 10 balls, 10 objects. I've got no idea how that is even, because dwell time corrections, height wise, everything, it's so insane to be able to control that number.
Yeah, and just the chance of having collisions when you juggle 8 balls is super high. And when you do 10, of course it's going to be even higher chance of collisions. So to see such an amazing run is, for me, it's just insane. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the second closest person now to Tom Whitfield is Alex Barron with 33 catches. So he is close to double the second place,
What pattern did Alex do in?
I think he also did it in async. I remember when he had 30 catches, then he did it in the sync crossing pattern, or wimpy as also a lot of jugglers call it. But when he did 33, I'm quite sure it was in async, which is that you have 5 balls in this end, 5 balls in this end, and you alternate the throws, but they never cross, basically. What else? I have more, Lewis.
Believe it or not. Bloody hell.
Yeah, so Pen Zhen from Taiwan, he just shattered his own world record with 6 Diablos low, which he's already so far ahead of everyone else, and now he's even further ahead. He did 46 catches of 6 Diablos. And I know, if I just go 10 years back in time, seeing Diablo players do 4 Diablos was insane. Okay, the last gold nugget, it's also from Japan, same as Kumiken, but this juggler is Kaito Tanioka. And he now just perfected a move that we saw a little glimpse of 3 years ago, and that is the 7 club, 5 up, 720 or double pirouette, and back into a controlled pattern. What do you think about that, Lewis?
Mind-boggling, and he did it in quads, which I suppose is easier to control than quints. But I just see quads as a 360, quints as a 720. But wait, this is the guy, I might be getting mistaken here, but I'm sure years ago he did a 5 club, 5 up, 1080, and he did it in triples. Am I getting confused by that?
I'm not sure. I think it might be correct, but I guess all of you viewers need to double check us on this. Yeah. And yeah, those are the gold nuggets for this time. And I'm probably not going to bring that many golden nuggets for future episodes, but there's always going to be some of them.
So yeah, this is the first episode of many, hopefully. So in season 1, yes, correct, we do have season 2 kind of in our heads. There's going to be 6 episodes a season, okay? And let me get this correct. There's going to be an episode every 2 weeks, okay? Season 1 will officially start in September. But the first episode of season 1 we've released now to excite you guys. We want to inspire and get things going. So yeah, in September there'll be 5 more episodes to finish off season 1. It will be the later part of September, so just to let you guys know.
Amazing. And for this episode, we are going to have a video right in the middle, which we're going to have for all of the episodes. And this specific video is going to be about numbers juggling, or in particular, ball numbers juggling. And what we're going to do in this episode is that we're starting to follow the journey of Tom Whitfield, who's trying to become the first juggler to ever do a 12-ball qualify, so at least 24 catches of 12 balls on camera. And we're also going to follow Erik Toll, who's going to attempt to do a 14-ball flash. 14 throws, 14 catches, become the second person in the world to ever do that.
The first person to do it in sync.
Yes, actually, if he gets it in sync, he will be the first person to ever get it in sync. That's correct. And what's really exciting about this is that these guys are not just here for this one episode, but we're actually going to call them up every single episode, at least this first season, to follow their journey, to see how their practice is going and if they're getting closer to reach their goal or not.
What stuff are you working on, Eivind, at the moment, juggling-wise?
Juggling-wise, I've been recently in South America for like 4 months. So, for example, ring juggling, I basically haven't done anything. And also, I've been trying at least my best to learn a lot of new 3-club moves, because they're really good at that in South America. But right now, specifically, I'm practicing towards the WGF, which is in Paris this summer, and it's only going to be routines. So for me now, it's especially big focus on 5 objects, even though I'm able to do more objects as well in my routines. It's a lot of 5 object juggling and just perfecting the routine that I'm going to perform there down in Paris. Okay, I think we have talked for long enough. So now let's just play the first video of many for this season, which is about Erik Toll and Tom Whitfield and their journey for the 12-ball qualify and the 14-ball flash. Please enjoy.
Squeeze together. That's good.
Thomas Whitfield, Erik Toll have both agreed for Eivind and I to monitor their biggest goal, the first 12-ball qualify and the second 14-ball flash. In each episode, Tom and Erik will keep us updated on these juggling goals. In February 2024, Felix, Tom and we went to Sweden to visit Erik. I filmed both from start to finish Tom's and Erik's juggling sessions. In this video, we're going to look at Erik's current training plan for a standalone session, where with Tom, we're going to look at his long-term training plan. As of February 2024, Tom's record with 12 balls is at 19 catches in async. In this session, Tom is attempting to tie the world record, which sits at 20 catches by Alex Barron. In this interview, Tom will talk us through his current weekly training, looking at flaws, mistakes, and ways to improve his structure for the 12-ball qualify.
Fantastic. Can you say something?
Hello.
Fantastic.
All things considered, I think yesterday's training session went fairly well. But if it was a general session I had without Lewis there with all the cameras, I think I would have been a bit disappointed.
So you said to me that there was a small chance that you might get the world record.
I think I said like quite high. At the beginning of the session I was like 25% chance maybe.
Yeah.
I would have revised that down like 10 minutes later probably.
Okay.
Or maybe like half an hour later when I actually got onto like 10 or something.
Okay.
It just didn't feel like physically there. Like my shoulders were a bit tired when I actually got into things. I think I didn't prepare terribly, like very well from it. In terms of preparation before, because I knew that this was going to be there filming, I tried to almost taper a little bit, and I didn't go to the gym 2 days before, which I usually would have done. And instead I just had a kind of gentle juggling session at home, bit of 7, bit of 8, bit of 9, and some wrist weights with 7 to 9. The wrist weights were probably overdoing it. I think that's maybe why I had my shoulders weren't fully recovered. So I think if I was to do it again, I would have maybe just not done the wrist weights or used the lighter ones, because I used the kilogram ones on that occasion. And then prior to that, the last hard session was the day before, so on the Wednesday. Like 2 hours 15, going up to 13, I think. That session was actually far more successful than the one with Lewis, unfortunately. Which is somewhat surprising, because that was the first one back from having a cold. So I was expecting just like an linear increase in progress, but didn't get that at all. So a typical week of training looks like 2 numbers sessions in a squash court or similar, just spread out evenly in the week. Then 2 gym sessions, and then hopefully 2 other juggling sessions in which I'm just in my flat at home doing kind of 7 to 9, working on endurance with 7, just sort of working on feel and getting time in with 8 and 9, and then sometimes spending time with wrist weights just to get more training in basically.
Does it, when you go into does that change depending on your goals?
Yeah, the way I train at the moment, that doesn't typically change, at least not intentionally. Like things always come up, like you go on holiday, you get a cold, whatever else in life happens, and then so that will put me back a bit. But pretty much week to week I'm training the same. I've thought about a lot, like should I be like reducing some of the like strength work I'm doing to like peak for juggling, or just like should I not do any strength work or whatever, different combinations. But I've not done too much experimentation. It feels like a difficult thing to do, to just like, and it's easiest to commit to your current training pattern just because you know it works reasonably well, and then it feels like a risk to deviate from that. Obviously I make small changes over time, but the idea of like, I don't know, completely changing it is somewhat scary, I would say. I wouldn't say I think what I'm doing is close to optimal. And it does change a bit depending on my goal. Like if my goal is 12, which it is at the moment, I'm going to be focusing on the things I think I lack in that area. So increasing my strength and like power and stuff is going to be more useful than if my goal was just 8, which is like relatively quite easy to keep a pattern going. Like my goal for that would just be like increasing endurance. I'll be spending a lot of time with 7. I wouldn't even necessarily need to go higher than like, I think 10 would be beneficial, but that was my sort of goal. I'm not sure I answered the actual question. I think I just went somewhere else.
I think that's better than that actual question.
Okay.
Yeah, Tom, that was pretty amazing, man.
Yeah, I would be willing to change what I do at the moment. I think what I lack in my current structure is like a set time where I'm supposed to actually be peaking. Like the general kind of system is, and I think that's what most jugglers do, is just that every session you're hoping to peak. But that might not be realistic if you're so far away physically from being able to do something. So it makes sense to have a phase where you're building strength, but that's going to take away from like what you can do day to day juggling wise. So yeah, I would, some kind of structure where I'm focusing on what I'm lacking and then reducing whatever work that is to like sort that out, and then focusing on actually peaking.
How often do you think you should peak?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your goal and like depends on what you want out of it, I guess, because it's very enjoyable to break a personal best every session. it's not realistic in some cases, but I don't know. Like, numbers juggling should be very easy if you come into the session with all the tools you need to like get it done. But a lot of the time, that's not the case, and you just end up like standing there, realizing you don't have what it takes today, but hopefully the time you spend there is going to be useful for like, you know, teaching your body how to do it in the future.
On a bad day, and you know it's a bad day, how would that change the later part of your session?
In a session where things are going poorly, I'm like, usually it's part of a like the wider way I plan my week. I think it's useful to go there and do that regardless of whether that individual session is going well. So I'm usually just like stick it out, and then sometimes that kind of pays off. Like 10 can be horrible, but 11 can be good one day. So I don't fully always know how things are going to go until I get there. I'm not usually fully surprised though. Like I'm never really disappointed when I get there, and then amazed later on in the session.
Why do you think that is? Do you think you're good at finding realistic goals for each session, and you're pushing the physical limits of juggling?
Yeah, I try to like break things down to not get disappointed, or to like have goals that aren't just like, if I'm trying to flash something, the goal may not be to just actually flash it. Like I can hopefully look for other bits of progress that I encourage him to keep going. So with like 13, I was tracking like catches and gathers, and just like, I was very happy with like a catchable run, a catchable like flash, even if I didn't catch them all. Yeah, so I've not tried structuring my training like over more than just like a week, I guess, because like every week is roughly the same. And it's just like how I am coming into it, because maybe that week happens after a holiday, and then I'm just expecting that week to be me building back up to like a current like best level or something. I first flashed 12 in autumn 2016. I don't remember the exact date. It was, I would say, relatively easy for me, because I'd spent that entire like maybe year before it or summer before it training to get a qualified time. Like I was more interested in that than flashing. So then by the time I got to 12, I'd already done a little bit of work with 6 in one hand, and I was just like very prepared at that point. I think my record with 6 in one hand was like 9 in one hand, 10 in the other or something. So I think it was just like maybe 3 sessions of trying and single before getting it. Yeah, flashing 13 was nowhere near as easy. I can't remember exactly when I first tried, but maybe it was a year after flashing 12. Then it was clearly out of reach when I tried it then, so I think it was maybe 6 months later that I tried again, and maybe a few months after that I tried again. Eventually I was trying pretty much every session. And it was like almost there, but it always felt a bit out of reach. Like I could often get them out, but like only by compromising like the height of the throws or something. And then very occasionally I'd feel fresh enough, and then it would actually be a catchable pattern. And then in hindsight, when I finally got it, it was after being injured for climbing. So at the time I was doing a decent amount of bouldering, got injured for that, so I had to be off climbing for 3 months. So then I was finally like actually fresh enough to do it. So then I think I got it on like the second session of going for it, with actually being fresh and fully recovered. So that was a good lesson of like the total volume I was doing was probably too much. There's something I try to pay attention to now, but I am aware now that like 13 is not something I can do all the time anymore. Like it never was. It's not something I can do like I would expect to do in a session, because I'm just not like fully recovered. I think I need to have a good like 3-4 days off, like any kind of strength stuff, to actually have the power to feel good about 13. I don't know if that's should apply to 12 as well, which is why I wonder about changing the structure of my training. But then I don't want to change it so much that in a typical week I'm plateauing or getting weaker in terms of strength, because then it seems like it wouldn't be good in the long run. It's hard to remember when I first thought about qualifying 12 as an option. Like I think I was very focused on, in the near term, what's a reasonable goal to get. So when I flashed 12, like certainly like 14, 16 seemed within reach. And then from experience of flashing 11 and then building up to runs, there's a kind of point when it feels like it's just kind of an extended flash, and then it moves into something you actually have to control. For like 11, that's like 17 to 19 catches. Like, getting beyond that can be difficult. So then with 12, I'm probably on that level now. Like, in some level, it's like just an extended flash, and like, can I actually control the pattern and get further? Is the question. What was the question? When do I think about conquering 12? Yeah, more recently I have had the experience with 12 where it feels like there is some control there, and I can see like an actual pattern I have control of. Like, I wouldn't say I'm anywhere close to making corrections, but there are small like rhythm adjustments where I can improve things. I don't know, the pattern is just so physical that's the difficulty, like getting them all up there with good rhythm and like in this kind of sustainable way and controlled way that's not too wide or too crazy or whatever. And then being able to maintain that is just basically the battle. That's why it seems like I need to get stronger, to just increase my chances of being able to maintain that. Obviously, like a perfect pattern will be way easier to maintain, but then my chances of throwing a pattern that's perfect when I'm only just strong enough to do it just seems like not good enough, really. I think I'm capable of qualifying 12 if I stay applied with what I'm doing, and maybe come up with a few more things that are like useful for training and improve what I'm doing. But I think it is something that's trainable, maybe in a year or two. And by the way, this is an async. Like, if we say, do I think I could do it in Wimpy, then the answer is like definitely yes. And it would be sooner than async.
How fast do you think you could get the 12 ball qualified in Wimpy?
It still would be hard. Like, I'm not saying it's easy by any means. I just think it takes away so many factors that it just makes it way more doable. So I would be like 100% certain I could do that within a year. Whereas with async, it's like, I don't know, we'll have to see how things go. Yeah, the structure of my session stays mostly the same. The warm-up lasts about 30 to 45 minutes, the warm-up being 5 to 9 balls. And then, I mean, if my goal is 12, you could say 10 and 11 are also warm-up. But yeah, after the warm-up, it just depends what my goals are. Like, the goal is 12, then I'm spending about 10 to 15 minutes on 10 and 11 to each of them. If the goal is lower than that, then obviously I'm going to spend longer time on that. And then it's particularly difficult with like 12 being the goal. I know there's a benefit to going to 13 for future sessions, but then in a particular session, you just want to stay on the number that you're working on. So it's hard to, you'll be running out of time. And then the trade-off between, do I do more of this because it's going well, or do I do something that I think will be useful for training later? Yeah, I've considered more like extreme approaches to structuring the session. Like, if my goal is 12, then why not just do something like warm up each arm separately and go through it as quickly as I can within like half an hour, then be doing 12 and being relatively more fresh. Maybe that would be a good idea. It's something that's one of those things that's like kind of scary to do, because what I do, I know what I do works fairly well at the moment, so it's easy to just stick with it. If my goal was like flashing 14, I think that'd be easier to convince myself to do. For 12, I don't know. I do like the kind of slow build up of warm up, and then also because 12 is so much more intense than 11, which is of course so much more intense than 10, it doesn't actually feel like you've taken much away anyway.
I'm sure I've read somewhere that Bruce Safling says that you spend 1 week on E-wings, 1 week loads.
Yeah, I think for like 2 weeks or something, I did play around with the one session you do even numbers, the next session you do odd numbers. I just don't think I cared for it really. Like, the jump from like 10 to 12 is then so ridiculous that I feel like I could be being more productive with the first 10 minutes of 12 where I'm like not even fully warmed up enough, and then I could just do 11 more. And it depends. Like, my goal is to kind of be good at everything. Like, I do have focuses, but I don't want to just be the guy that does one number and just ignore everything else, because I think it all has benefit.
Perfect. I think that's everything.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you have anything.
I don't think so.
No.
Let's think about more.
How has it really, really well?
Nice.
In the camera. Boom. Nice.
That's terrible, isn't it?
Boom. Nice.
So how do we pack this up?
As in, like, thank you, Lewis, for this opportunity. Is that what you said?
Yes, perfect. This is the end. Felix?
On the 7th of April, after this interview was recorded, Tom finally reached 20 catches of 12 balls. Only 4 more to go, Thomas.
So, that was the end of that one. Goodbye.
Felix and I met Eric in the centre of Gothenburg. Eric only thought Felix and I were meeting him. We didn't tell him that Tom also joined us. Tom is a hero to Eric. Before heading to the hall for Eric's juggling session, we told Eric we had to dash back to the hotel because I had forgotten my tripod. On the way back, we got Tom to pretend he didn't know us and to ask Felix to take a photo of him next to a statue. Look at Eric's priceless reaction once he realises Tom Whitfield was here.
For God's sake, it's Tom Whitfield. Wow. I never thought I would see you. Like, maybe in EJC, but yeah, I would. God. I just thought it was some random guy who wanted some help with the photos, and then I recognized him, so I was like, yeah.
It's not before I said before that, so you can be like...
Yeah. Is that Tom? Yeah.
He's taking a photo of this guy.
Yeah.
So...
Eric took us around the city. My favourite part was the art museum. Eric and Tom talked numbers juggling the whole way around. They weren't even looking at the paintings. I overheard them talking about what they believe are the physical limits to numbers juggling and the rise in kid jugglers flashing high numbers, and what this could mean for the future. I didn't record any of these conversations, but these will be good topics to discuss later on in the episode.
We are ready to go right now.
When Eivind and I started talking about this project, he told me about this Swedish kid with mega potential for numbers juggling. His name is Eric Thor. He is only 17 years old, 6'5", built like a beast, and has already flashed 13 balls, and is now working on flashing 14. Therefore, Eivind and I messaged him to see if he would be up for me coming to visit and filming one of his 14 ball practice sessions. Eric replied with every session's a 14 ball practice session, and of course you can come and visit and film. We are now going to break down one of his 14 ball practice sessions. Eric's approach to practicing is very different from what I've seen from other jugglers, including other number jugglers. First, let's look at Eric's warm-up from the start of his session. We will compare this against Tom's warm-up for his 12 ball qualifying goal. Even though they have different goals, both being numbers jugglers, I would have expected their practice structure to be fairly similar. But it wasn't similar at all. Here is a breakdown of the warm-ups. It only took Eric 24 minutes to get to his main training goal, the 14 ball flash attempts, where it took Tom 1 hour 9 minutes to get onto 12 balls. Tom spent 35 minutes on 5 to 9 balls. From there he spent another 34 minutes on 10 balls, 11 balls and 6 in one hand before moving on to 12.
I need to do like 12 balls for 10 minutes to even get warm for 12 balls.
Yeah.
With all the other stuff I've done before. Like, it's still not quite there.
That's something we should definitely discuss. Even if Eric started his warm-up 3 minutes after Tom, Eric would have still gotten to 12 balls before Thomas even touched 8. Apart from the 966, Eric always moved on to the higher number once he got a good run. But with 12 balls, Eric attempted it 23 times and didn't flash it. He told me he was going to move on to 13 as he didn't want to waste any more energy on 12. Eric attempted 13 balls 10 times. He got these 2 nice attempts.
Could have been great.
That was really nice.
At the end of his warm-up, he tried 7 in one hand, 5 from the right and 7 from the left.
71 and... Yeah.
Nice, Eric.
I think I'm ready.
Put 14 balls by me.
Yeah, but first I need some more water. But it's not really like that water.
Okay, you're good to go, Doctor.
Yes.
According to the number league rules, Eric's record currently sits at 5 catches. This is calculated by how many balls are caught in order. In the first 9 minutes of Eric's 14 ball practice, he attempts the flash 32 times. This equates to just under 17 seconds per attempt, which sounds pretty crazy to me. Here is his third attempt to his 32nd attempt. These attempts in red and blue are where he caught either the first 2 or the first 3 balls. Catching at least the first 2 balls 6 out of 32 times shows you that Eric is strong and quick enough to release all of the balls. This is very positive. But on the negative side, these 15 attempts in yellow are all failed releases, where he didn't manage to release all the balls correctly. From these clips, the main problem appears to be his left hand. This is almost half the attempts, which is a waste of energy. But look at this attempt in pink. Eric tied his record of 5 catches and almost caught 6. This is very exciting. Looking at these 2 clips in slow motion, you can see that there are things for Eric to work on, but he has a lot of potential.
Lewis, bring your hands for a break. But the big problem is like the first pairs are feeling really great, but then it gets tight. So they're usually colliding or crossing. So I gotta try to keep them apart somehow.
The best tip for that is to not cross them.
Nice, that's a great tip. So something that I didn't realise what Eric does is that he does many sessions of 14 balls. And it looks like you're going to do 4 in total today.
Yes, that's right.
How long do you have in between each session?
3 to 5 minutes, and then I'm usually taking some water, just sitting down, relaxing, and that's mostly to not lose energy, to like keep up great form throughout the whole practice session. Because if I do it the whole thing without any breaks, I'm gonna like lose the technique. So in this way, I can keep up the form for a longer time.
Yeah. How long do you have each mini session?
Like 10 minutes, yes.
Yeah.
But sometimes 15.
What tells you that it's time to stop?
When I feel tired and when the technique is getting worse. Something that tells me not to stop is when it's still going well.
Yeah.
Like I'm never stopping if it feels great. But if it starts to feel bad, then I always stop for a few minutes and then come back, and then it's usually gonna be better. So that way I can keep going for longer.
Yeah. How did he come up with this technique of training?
Well, I don't know, it just felt logic to do it that way. It's a bit like that in my athletic training as well. We are usually taking some drinking break in between. So I've just taken that habit into juggling as well. Yeah. Let's go.
Let's go. So what you just saw was Eric's first of 4 9 to 15 minutes short 14 ball sessions. I didn't break down the second, third or fourth session as they were fairly similar to the first, but in the third session he only tried async fountain. The fourth session went on for the longest. I was thinking we would possibly see a change in technique due to tiredness and decrease in strength, but we didn't. Short bursts of 10 to 15 minutes could be the best way to practice when training for flashes. I actually really like this method of training when aiming for a specific goal. I feel like this could even be beneficial for big tricks with low numbers as well. I actually would be very curious in knowing if Spencer used this method for the DB, would he have gotten it faster? Since the time of filming this in February, Eric's official record is still 5 catches, but here is a recent 14 ball attempt and you can see that Eric is improving. His pattern is getting tighter and less wild, his release also looks cleaner and less effortless. Ignoring the official number league rules, Eric's current total number of gathers is 11 out of 14. Dan Wood gave me one of his 14 ball practice sessions. Unlike Eric, Dan doesn't have a main juggling goal. He sometimes tries 14 balls at the end of his 1.5 hour practice session. When comparing Eric's and Dan's 14 ball session, the biggest difference I found is Dan did an attempt about every 30ish seconds, where Eric only took around 17 seconds per attempt. In Eric's whole session, he did around 140 attempts, where Dan only did 22 attempts. Obviously, Dan doesn't have the main focus like Eric does with the 14 ball flash, but I do wonder what is the optimal amount of attempts for improvement per session. Another difference is Dan only had 4 failed release attempts out of 22, which is 18% of his attempts, whereas Eric had around 45% of his attempts were failed releases. We need to discuss this later on in the episode.
Interview. This is going to film you in the show.
Yeah. No, I didn't understand what.
Yes, something with a rhythm, please.
With a rhythm?
Yes.
Yes, you don't go too far there, Thomas. Nice! Can you say my name is Eric?
My name is Eric.
No, perfect. Okay, Eric, how are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. It's nice to be here. Yeah, my training session today, it went well overall. In the beginning, during the warm-up, my collect felt a bit weird. All numbers up to 11 was working as usual, but then I didn't get any 12 ball flash as an example. And, technically it felt great, but yeah, I always had some trouble with catching them all. But then it got way better at the end, because as we said before, I had like 4 different sessions, and especially the last 2 sessions, then the technique felt a lot more solid, and I had this small feeling back in my head like, this could maybe work today. Like, of course I knew that it would happen, but I still felt like that, so that was nice. So one of the reasons why I enjoy numbers juggling so much, it's not only thanks to the mentality that I got from my athletics that I want to push my personal bests, it also that I think it's looking very cool. Like the parents are looking so powerful, it's so huge, it's so big, and yeah, I think that's something that impresses like your friends and stuff like that. So yeah, and also that a lot of people have like, if you're telling people that you're juggling, the question they always ask is like, okay, how many can you do? So yeah, it's partly like to impress others as well, but also because I think it's funny and looking very cool. So yeah.
Awesome. Why do you bend down before releasing?
It's a way for me to get those high throws by using my body to get the strength I need. If I would be standing like normal and do a high throw just with my arm, I wouldn't get that high. So it's a way for me to involve my whole body in the first high throws, because if it wasn't for that bending, I would not be able to do that start. So, and then it feels a bit like it's helping me to keep the balance in the beginning. Like if I would stand normally without bending my knees, I would probably fall to the side or whatever. So it's both mostly to get the power I need in the beginning, but also to feel like I have enough balance. Yes.
We're not drinking tonight, so
Yeah.
thank you so much. Very nice to meet you.
Pleasure meeting you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure we'll see each other very, very soon. We'll try our best.
Yeah, I know, stay here.
Yes, we'll probably see each other at EJC.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
Perfect. Do you want to end the camera one? Just slap your hand in front of the camera. Yeah, just go boom like that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, Lewis, you give me the heads up when we're going to start, and then I'm just going to go for it.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Amazing. So now we're here at the panel discussion. But before we start that, Lewis, I just need to say that video was amazing. I really, really enjoyed the analysis part of it. Kind of all of the color, the squares, and then that you could really visualize what attempts were failed, left-hand releases, what attempts were really good, so that you can sort everything in a good way. And actually, for especially numbers juggling, I really think this kind of could be the future of juggling coaching in a way, because it's a really good way of actually understanding what's happening for a whole and not just what's happening for one specific attempt.
Yeah,
so that was very clever.
Thank you.
What else? Yeah. It was also really interesting to hear about Erik and Tom, that apparently throughout the whole art exhibition, you guys were just discussing human limits within the juggling. And I love the topic, but I don't really think we're going to have that much time for this episode. But for sure, I really hope that we could make that a topic for a future event. But now we have some new guys with us. Of course, it's me and Lewis. But then we also have Erik. Hello, Erik.
Hello.
And then we also have Tom. Welcome.
Hey, guys.
And in addition to Erik and Tom, which you just saw in the video, we have 2 more guys that we're going to have as special guests for this episode. And we're also going to have special guests for the future episode, but this time it's these 2 guys. And right now, I want all of you guys at home to try and guess who's that juggler. First of all, they both start with the same letter. Second, they're both from Britain. Third, they're known for their numbers juggling. And fourth, one of them has qualified 11 balls, and another one has qualified 10, as well as running a half marathon for under 2 hours and 30 minutes. And of course, I'm talking about Davely and Dan Wood. Welcome so much.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello. Hello. How are you guys doing?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, pretty good. I think I've just realised that by flashing 12, I'm bringing the average amount in this conversation down. Which never feels great.
How about me, David? Jesus, when you make me feel worse.
Yeah, the average here is really high. We have 3 13-ball jugglers, 2 12-ball jugglers, and then we have Lewis. It's very true. Okay, guys. Before we start discussing a lot of things in the video, I have gathered some questions for you. Are you guys ready? So, I want all of you guys to answer, except for Lewis, because he knows the answers. And the question is, what continents don't have a juggler who has flashed 12 balls?
You mean like residents or, actual, visits from other
People
jugglers?
that live in that continent. Yeah. So
Yeah,
if you go to one continent and you flash 12 balls there, it does not count. Yeah, if you flash 12 balls, it will count as Europe. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So Africa, Asia, and Australia?
Yes. And one more.
South America?
No, it has been done.
I think I know who's...
Yeah, Antarctica.
Oh, there's like a guy from like 2003, right?
You mean Antarctica?
Antarctica, correct. But yes, South America is one that maybe some people don't know about. And that's the next question. And that is, who was the fourth person in the world to ever flash 12 balls?
Well, if it's the South American guy, I think that's Alvaro Palominas.
That's correct.
Nice.
Alvaro Palominos. Do you know what pattern he did it in?
Wimpy, I think.
Yes, correct. I remember when I saw this on Juggle Wiki, I was like, who's that guy? And it was so long ago. So that was real fun to see. It was, I have the list here. So first it was Bruce Serafin, then Ben Beaver, then Sam Hartford, and then Alvaro Palominos. So before Peter Bone, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. I think that's a really cool fact. Okay. A little bit away from ball numbers juggling, but more some overall things. Who has officially qualified the most objects combined with balls, clubs, and rings? And how many was it?
Could it be you?
It's not me. No.
It's not... You said it qualified the most.
Yes.
Maybe just Gatto.
I think it's Gatto. Like 8 clubs, 10 rings. I'm convinced there's a video of 10 balls, but like I haven't seen that in forever. But at least 9 balls. That's still like 27, right?
Yes, correct. That's exactly correct. So 8 clubs he has on camera, 10 rings he has on camera. Off camera he has 11. And then on camera he has 9 balls at least. But he probably could have gotten 10. But it's incredible. He's the only one who officially has 27. And unofficially he has 28. And for sure, I don't think it would be a problem to do 29. And that, yeah, it's really just a statement from Gatto, I think, how insane he was.
Because I recall watching a video. What is the old juggling like forum?
IJDB?
Rec.juggling.
Yeah.
Rec.juggling.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure like in those days where you had to download juggling videos, I recall seeing at least a video of Gatto like doing 20 plus throws of 10. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe put the idea out there. Maybe someone would be able to find that video. But
yeah, maybe. David Kane, if you're watching this, could you find us a video of Gatto doing 20 catches or more with 10 balls? That would be amazing. All right. You guys are doing well.
I'm impressed.
And the last one. Who has the most 12-ball jugglers? The UK or the rest of the world?
I feel like back like when, well, I was going to say when Dan and I was relevant. Probably when I was relevant, Dan's still relevant. But I feel like we had more then. But secretly, a lot of people have flashed 12 now, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if we're now outnumbered.
I would guess it's the rest of the world, but only by a few.
Same, by like 1 or 2 maybe.
Because like,
feels like it could be the UK.
Does UK have any new 12-ball jugglers in the last like 8 years? Like since the kind of era of like Alex or Luke Davis, like, is that anyone?
I might have been the last British person to flash 12.
Wow, no way.
Is that
You want the
Let's
answer?
go with the rest of the world.
The answer is the rest of the world. And just to confirm, Johnny Moore is Irish, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
Oh,
Oh, no, he's Northern Irish.
He's not Irish.
He's not?
Is he?
Well,
No, he's Irish, right? Because I'm now secretly
Right
Irish
now.
as well. Because I was going to flash 12 balls and claim an Irish record because I have Irish citizenship. But then Johnny Moore, am I like getting this completely wrong? I'm so sorry if this is wrong, Johnny. But I thought he beat me to it.
Let's
see. We're going to get the answer now.
I don't think he's going to pick up. You'll be thinking, why is Lewis spoiling me? At 8:30 at night.
But he is Northern Irish, right?
I'm sure he is. Yeah.
It's not answering.
Haven't you been to his house?
Yeah, he lives in Northern Ireland now, but I can't guarantee he was born there.
Okay, I was going to say, because otherwise he's very polite.
If he's from Northern Ireland, then it would be considered UK. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
He's going to phone us back in a second.
In a second.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyways, I could give you the answer. If we say that he's Irish, then we would have 8 from the UK and 12 from the rest of the world. If he's not, then it's 9 from the UK and 11 from the rest of the world. So it's very close. And Tom, you were correct. The 7 guys that flashed 12 balls after you are not from the UK. And then it was Johnny Moore after that. So before you, it was for sure really UK dominated. But it has just recently changed over the years.
I assume this is like with video footage or so.
Yes, you also have 3 more jugglers. So you have Luke Burge and Josh Turner. And then Nick, I don't know him, but Nick Mayer.
I think he's Swiss, maybe.
I thought he was Swiss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It said so at least on juggling records. Amazing. So to you guys at home, if you want to participate a little bit in all of these different episodes, you can scroll down in the description and go to our Instagram there. And then you can send us a DM with a Juggle Vision question for us to use in the future episodes.
So this whole video is about numbers juggling with balls. But obviously you could do numbers juggling with any prop, even cups. But Eivind has actually got the cleanest 10 catches of 8 clubs that I've ever seen in Fountain. So Eivind, what's the difference between the clubs and balls when it comes to numbers juggling?
Yeah, so it's I'd say a really different skill set between numbers with clubs and numbers with balls. First of all, when you do numbers with clubs, it's way slower. That's the first thing. So when I do, for example, 9 clubs, it's slower than if I juggle 7 balls. And 7 balls is super comfortable for most high number ball jugglers. So the speed is very, very different. But the power you need for each throw is way greater, I'd say, with the clubs, and especially the strength required in your grip, which really isn't that existent for balls, whereas it's more shoulders and triceps and biceps, everything working together, going up and going down really quickly. So you need to maybe have more strength with clubs, but you need to be more rapid with balls. And you also need to react way quicker with balls. Because it's just so much more stuff happening at once, basically. And also another big difference is with balls, this is not quite true, but it explains a point that with balls, a touch is as good as a catch. But with clubs, this is not the case at all. And the chance of you collecting everything, if you have a perfect ball pattern, usually is greater than if you have everything perfect with a club pattern. And probably even greater if you have everything perfect with a ring pattern, which is super easy to catch if everything is perfect. So with clubs and rings, the throwing is kind of, with rings and balls, throwing is super important. But with clubs, the catching itself is also very, very difficult. So I think those are the main differences, and everything requires different skill sets. Yeah.
Nice, Eivind.
All right. So, Dave and Dan, I would at least consider you guys to be some of the, maybe the second generation of the pioneers for ball numbers juggling. Would you agree with that statement?
Roughly. It's quite a long first generation. But I think David Kane would disagree. He'd probably say there's 10 generations before that.
Yeah, you probably would. We're a bit more new school, I guess.
but at least you guys are kind of the jugglers that I grew up watching a lot on YouTube. And when I started, then already there was some videos of Peter Bone, there were some videos of Bruce Serafin and Ben Beaver and all of these guys. But I have always followed your guys' numbers progression and seen you kind of climb up to the level which you guys are at now. And one thing that I would like to ask you is, when we talk about numbers juggling, how would you guys describe what numbers juggling is? And also, second question, so two different ones. How do you think the numbers community was back then, let's say 10 years ago, compared to how it's now? We can start with Dave.
I think, to me, what numbers juggling has just always been is like anything where I didn't think it was reasonable to get any level of like solid control. I understand like a lot of people might like differ on that kind of definition, but to me, like especially before Tom, like something like 10 balls I would just view as like completely not just like controllable and runnable forever. So that's always like the kind of barrier to numbers. And like it changes over time. Like when I started juggling, like 6, when you're trying to get your first flash or qualify or whatever, it has that same like feeling, doesn't it? Of like, it just feels uncontrollable and unmanageable. And then, you know, as you get like stronger, better, more accurate, all of these things, like that just slowly progresses over time. I understand like 8 and 9 have always, for me personally, been like the numbers where it like bleeds into, it probably is achievable to like have full control and mastery, but it's just so ridiculously difficult that it's mostly viewed in the same vein for me. So I'd say that's how at least I view numbers. So yeah, basically just, it's almost like unachievable to, you know, solidly run it. As for like how numbers has changed, yeah, a few things. Like, I would say, first of all, like when I was practicing and training when I was younger, I was not very analytical, like whatsoever. I didn't practice very like in any kind of smart fashion. And I think like if we like applied ourselves and had like better resources and stuff, like we might have been able to progress a lot more. I think people are more willing to do stuff like that. You know, the fact that we have, you know, this where we're talking about like how to train and stuff like that. I think also with Alex Barron sort of coming onto the scene and like destroying everyone, it kind of gave an obvious path that strength was actually like really, really important and something that I'd like completely sort of overlooked. I think as time has gone on though, I've like started shifting a little bit of what I think the importance of that is. Like, I don't know, there's so many videos, aren't there, of just like people doing 12 and 13 seemingly off like raw speed rather than like having a lot of strength like Alex used to. So I think like maybe, what was that? I think maybe we're starting to, you know, sort of progress into like, you know, these younger, faster people are able to like also demonstrate that like you can also do numbers like that. It doesn't quite have to be the Alex Barron way, even though like, you know, from mine and Dan's era, he kind of paved the way. Same with Peter Bone. He's also another person that's like extremely strong, isn't he? He has like big, tall patterns.
Yeah, it has been really interesting to see. And as you mentioned, kind of 8 to 9, it kind of feels like a gray area in a way. Whereas for sure, most jugglers, this would be numbers. But kind of by the definition that, okay, it feels uncontrollable, then it becomes quite subjective, even though we can look at it, okay, but what about for the best in the world? Where does that start? And then again, it's kind of often 10 and up, which before last week or something, it would be considered unrunnable before Tom Whitfield's 51 catches. But and yeah, it's the same with clubs as well, I guess. Like 6 and 7 is like, yeah, people have over 1,000 catches with 6, or one guy has over 1,000 catches with 6 and 7. But with 8, the record is 18, so completely different. With rings, it's kind of, it isn't that big of a gap between. It's a big gap between in 9 and 10, but maybe not as big as with 7 to 8 clubs, for example. But yeah, interesting to hear. What about you, Dan? How would you describe numbers juggling and also the numbers community before compared to now?
Yeah, so I'm pretty similar to Dave on the definition, but the only thing I think I'm considering differing on is when we're looking at sort of 6, 7 balls, even when you're just learning it and you're still just getting like a flash or just over. At the time, maybe I thought of that as juggling, but maybe I don't agree with that now, because I always sort of, when I was doing it, I was aiming to get solid at it. So even though I wasn't anywhere near solid, I had it in my mind that I would be. Whereas when I'm trying 13 now, there's no idea of running it for ages. So I guess there is a difference there.
Yeah.
But when you're doing it, I suppose 8 catches of 6 is still numbers to the person doing that. So I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
And then on...
Yeah, I like what you say. Yeah, continue on.
On the new generation of juggling, of numbers juggling, I think what Dave didn't mention is the idea that in our era, everyone who did numbers juggling also sort of started from just general technical juggling. So we would all want to have a solid base of 7 with lots of tricks, and we'd make other videos about other things, and numbers was just an element to our juggling. I think that's true for everyone until the last sort of 5 years maybe. And now the new era seems to be more focused on numbers juggling as a pursuit on its own. It's almost as if it's a different thing to juggling. And I think I would have been surprised if you told me 10 years ago that it was possible to flush 12 and more without having a really solid foundation of lower numbers juggling.
Yeah, because both you, Dave, and Dan, I remember having seen so many 3-ball videos as well from you guys, especially during the 3-ball neck throw era that was around 10 years ago. But Erik, I want to include you now as well, because you and Dylan and Siler are maybe some of the 3 kind of new jugglers that really has gone straight towards numbers juggling. At least that's my impression. Is that correct, or what would you say?
Well, I mean, when it comes to, if you're referring to that we are people who have gone more straight to numbers juggling instead of, focusing on the foundation of a lot of tricks and stuff at the beginning, I think it's partly correct, because we've all had this, determination that we have to, get as far as possible within numbers juggling. I mean, as Dan said, it's not really a part of the juggling anymore. It's like the main focus of the juggling. But I think we all, like all jugglers, they all start with some tricks with lower numbers first. Like, that's a very natural thing to do. But it was also very natural for me, coming from athletics, to, push the personal limits, like already at 3 balls, pushing the endurance up to a minute, and just keep going from there. And yeah, I thought it was fascinating to, see people like Alex Barron and Tom Whitfield maximizing the numbers 10, 11. Felt like I wanted to get there too. So yeah, I think it could be right in a way, but I think we all have to do some tricks first,
Yeah, really cool, because juggling is kind of this fine line between practicing specifically on what you want to be good at, but also having the coordinational foundation in a way, because almost everything in juggling is coordination. I think most of you would agree, like let's just say 90 to 95% of everything in juggling is coordination, but the higher you go, the less coordination part is the main thing, as when you reach higher, you also really need that strength, you need that explosiveness. But if you don't have the coordination, it doesn't matter if you can bench 200 kilos, you really need to have this. But if I go over to Dave, because I believe that you, Dave, with Alex Barron, might be the 2 first people ever to attempt 14 balls. We can maybe have the video show on right now in this episode, so you guys.
I have an unlisted one that's at least slightly better.
Wow.
All right. Okay, yeah. Well, we can show that one as well. You can send it to Lewis. And what I want you to talk about is that very day, that practice session, those attempts, all the way up until Alex actually got the flash. Kind of your thought process. Is it possible? Is it not possible? Wow, it's actually doable. Everything from that point until the flash.
Yeah, okay, so interestingly, because those videos are definitely, the ones that you're referencing are just like some, at least from my end, they're like me attempts at 14. I can't remember, I assume Alex had flashed 13 when that video came out. Otherwise, I'm not sure why we're trying 14 if he hasn't. I think, like, deep down, I knew at least 14 has to be possible at that point, even though it was obviously wildly beyond anything I could achieve. I think even like in the first session of watching Alex like attempt it, I like kind of knew that like Alex legitimately has like, yeah, the attempt's like really far away from an actual flash, but like he has like the potential and probably can actually get there. In anything in life, that doesn't mean that you're actually going to go and do it, but at least like as soon as you've seen like the sort of proof of concept, at some point it's going to come, right? I know, like, because I think it was a long time between that and the actual 14 ball flash. The actual 14 ball flash was like the most shocking day of my life. I remember like I was like practicing juggling outside. I think I then went to my friend Kieran's house and then looked at my phone. And Alex just sent a message saying like, "Oh my God, I just did 14, like video incoming." And I was like, okay, fair enough. And then like, he didn't even mention anything about it. He just sent this link, I click on it and I see it's in async and it's so high, it's so powerful, it looks so ridiculous. And I'm just like, what the hell? Like every like perception or like anything I sort of thought I kind of understood about numbers juggling, I think that day was like kind of broken. Yeah. I know, for example, okay, quick tangent. So I use a terminology called gathers, right? I think a lot of people are hopefully starting to use this, but basically like it's just throws minus drops, and I call that gathers.
And okay, compared to catches,
which is just like catches is just like caught in order, right? But the thing is like if you try and flash 12 and you miss like one ball because it hits your hand and bounces off in the second pair, but then you catch the other 11. Like in terms of your own like self-fulfillment and monitoring progress, it just feels better. But yeah, I think Alex told me that his like best amount of gathers for 14 was like 11. What? And then he just flashed 14 in async. So I was like, okay, fair enough.
Okay, I want to shoot in with something. If I'm not mistaken, Eric, your personal best with gathers is also 11. Is that correct?
That's right. That's I felt, whoa, it's like me.
So you should go and practice 14 async after this call.
Amazing. I just tried to look up on YouTube now. I'm just in his.
It's also for Dan too. His gathers is 11.
Yeah.
Wow,
the magical number.
Amazing. I just scrolled a little bit through Alex's YouTube now without clicking on the videos, and it says the 14 ball flash is now 7 years ago, and the 13 ball flash is 12 years ago, and it also said that it's 12 years ago since the first attempt of 14 balls. So basically 5 years in between, plus minus probably some months, to go from nothing to the flash.
Mm-hmm.
Then in terms of this progress, to start from a point, start working on something into actually getting it, could you tell us a little bit about the mindset that you need to have as a numbers juggler, and maybe use your 13 ball journey as an example?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if you want to actually achieve it, if it's sort of only just within your reach, then you need to fully commit to it, which it seems like Eric does with all his number juggling. Because I think that was my problem with 13, that I never fully committed. I would try it once a week, but at a max once a week, and then I would do that for a few months, and then I wouldn't try it for 6 months or something. So that's why it took 9 years for me to get it from the first few attempts to achieving it. But all my progress pretty much was made in the last sort of year, and that was because I was consistently training, and I also did strength training as well. So it just takes any sort of commitment, I think.
Yes, amazing. Now I want us to discuss a little bit more about the video that we just saw. And I think it could be interesting to actually ask all four of you guys, because even though you, Eric, and you, Tom, are in the video, you still got to see someone else in the same video. So, Tom, we can start with you. What stood out the most from the video that you just watched?
I think it was the difference between our practice structure. But then I did also have that realization in person, because I was in the hall during Eric's session. But it was a surprise to me. Like, I assumed his warm-up would be way quicker than mine, but not to that extent. And then I assumed he would be more focused on the specific goal, but then not to the same extent as well.
Yeah. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, I think it's both that and the number of attempts per minute or whatever that Eric does. Yeah, both of them are just sort of symptoms of general urgency to reach your goals. Because I always thought that Eric was progressing so fast just because he'd focused so much on the numbers element of juggling. But it could also be just how many more attempts he gets per session than us.
Yeah, like in terms of how fast he progresses, or how many attempts so that he can get lucky once?
I think the progress.
The progress mostly, yeah. I believe so as well. But of course, many attempts is important with numbers juggling. What about you, Eric? Because I would at least say that you are the guy with kind of the special practice routine. So when you watch Tom practice, was it strange for you in a way, or was that, that's how I expect it to be?
It was strange in a way. I mean, I was expecting him to do like a proper warm up, but not like spending that much time on each number, on each trick, like element before getting up to like 11 and stuff. Like if I would do a warm up for, I think it was 1 hour and 9 minutes, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Then I feel like I wouldn't be at my peak of energy by that point. I think I would have gone down in energy. So for me, it would have been longer than I needed to, get started with my actual goal. Yeah. So that was like a little surprising to me, but like the opposite to Tom, like he was expecting me to do a little shorter warm up, and for me, the opposite. I was expecting him to have like a longer warm up, but not to not that far, not that long. Yeah.
What about you, Dave? What was the one thing that stood out the most for you?
Yeah, probably roughly the same, or just, I guess, Eric's structure. I think in general, like most people in sort of my era probably used to practice similar to what Tom did. Like when I used to practice a lot, it was not that weird for me to get to 8+ objects, 1.5 hours, 2 hours into a session. But I think for me, like I would have viewed sort of like trying 11 or 12 as a bit like the icing on the cake. So like where Eric just said, like he wants peak fitness and stuff at that, mine was almost like an afterthought. Whereas like, obviously, actually, if it is your main goal, it's just the highest number possible, then, you need like a decent enough warm up so that you are like fully firing, but ultimately like you don't want to be burning through your, resources.
Yeah, because it's at least I feel like it's a tendency in the community now that everyone are becoming more specialists compared to before. Whereas before it was more people that did all props. It was more people that were kind of practicing all the different amounts of objects. Whereas now you have those that only does flow juggling with 3 objects. You have those that almost only focus on numbers. You have those that just do rings. You have those that you just do clubs. So this might be because of that trend as well. But Tom, your warm-up was significantly, oh, I say that word wrong. Lewis, you should help me.
You want me to say it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to try. Significantly.
Amazing. Yes,
I
it
tried
was
so hard.
longer. I actually, because we had it on the screen before, but going from 5 to finishing with 11 balls, you, Eric, you used 9 minutes and 45 seconds, whereas you, Tom, used 1 hour and 9 minutes. It's a huge difference, and of course we could say, yeah, but Eric's warm-up was longer than 9 minutes because he also practiced 12 balls. He practiced 7 in one hand. He practiced 13, and all of this is a part of his warm-up. But still, it's massively different. Do you guys think that you would benefit from borrowing a bit from each other, or would you rather stick with what you're doing now? What do you think, Tom?
So if my goal of the session was make 14 as well, it would look closer to Eric's practice. Not to that extent. Maybe I'd guess like a half an hour would be my warm-up. But like when I'm focusing on running a pattern, it just feels like a different thing. Like you need to like recruit different muscles and get really warmed up and really kind of like solid with things before we move on. At least that's how it feels like to me. And then also I'm using the same balls throughout the session. I think Eric did as well. So like when you're doing 5 balls with the balls you're going to use for 11. So I did switch balls after 11, but using the same balls as 5 and 11, like you're really not taking much away. And that's even the same up to like 9. Like I'm just getting like kind of dialed in with like small things like consistency and catching. So it does feel beneficial. And the time just kind of like I don't know. I don't know where it goes. Like it doesn't feel like I've actually done much. And then I look at the clock and it's like 45 minutes in, I've just finished with 9. And I'm feeling like pretty good about attempting 10.
Yeah. But Tom, do you feel like it's mostly about getting your muscles ready or getting the feel of the juggling ready?
I think it's both. Like, yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Eric? Because I kind of feel a little bit like the same with Tom. I need, maybe not, or actually, yes, I usually need quite a long time. Not just that my body physically is ready, but that it just feels right, to go for it. But for you, it seems like you get to that stage really quick, or you can talk about it.
I mean, since I'm going for just a flash and not a longer run like the qualify as Tom does, I think it requires a lot less technique. It's more about the amount of power. And telling from my experience, it feels like you can warm up to reach your, peak power way faster than, the peak of your technique of a session, as an example. I feel like when you're supposed to do a longer run, it's partly getting a bit into, endurance, but also perfecting each throw. But I think it was Luke Burridge who said this, that like when you're flashing and collecting, the throws don't have to be perfect all the way through, which, of course it will be beneficial if they are, but it's not as important as when you're going to continue. And what I'm trying to say by that is to get perfect throws, to be able to maintain the technique during a longer run, as an example. If you're going for a qualify, I think that will require a longer warm-up. And I mean, sometimes I can get a bit too excited when it comes to, just adding numbers, getting to my actual goal, like when sometimes I take my juggling balls to school, and yeah, I'm usually starting to do 9 after maybe doing some runs with 5. Like, I'm very quick to get up there, so I think maybe I could take it a bit easier, but I feel like it's working pretty well the way I'm warming up right now. So
Yeah.
maybe I could extend it a bit, but I don't think I would do it to the same amount as Tom, you know.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I remember seeing Ufuk Schneer once, and I think it probably took him 3 or 4 hours before he started with 9, and he only did 3, then 5, then 7. But he was a different beast. I think at least what I've written down is that, Erik, you have an average of 17 seconds between each attempt, which I was really amazed by. How quick it was. Maybe it was a bit too quick compared to the power you had back then, especially when we look at that that the throws became lower and lower. Maybe it would be beneficial with longer break, at least back then. But we're going to talk more about this. But now your height has increased. But I'm not sure if you have increased the amount of pause.
I don't know, maybe by a few seconds, but not like a bigger difference. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Would it be something you think would be beneficial to increase?
Can I use power and throw them quickly?
I don't know. It could be a way for me to rest my muscles a bit longer, but I think the reason why I'm always taking these short breaks is I think it's mental in a way. I want to feel like I'm doing the pattern as much as I can during the session. Like, I don't want the session to, have these, how am I supposed to say that? It shouldn't include just like 80% of just pausing and then like 20% of juggling. I want it to be, the juggling has to take a pretty big part, so you really get into the feeling of doing the pattern, or that's at least how I think. But then, of course, when I need to, get my breath back, then of course I'm trying to take a little longer break for a few more seconds. But yeah, it's mostly to stay in the pattern for as long as possible. And yeah, maybe it could be beneficial. I don't know, but as I said before, I'm taking these breaks like every 10 minutes because the technique is usually getting worse. But when you take this break and come back, it will usually be back at the same point as it was at the beginning.
Amazing. Dave. Oh, Lewis, shoot in.
I was going to say, did David want to say something before that?
I was just going to say that, like, I think almost famously, Alex Barron used to like have no pause. Yeah, exactly. It was like almost like a joke of like he'd be like still picking them up on the ground while he's like releasing the first ball, right?
Yeah, like no setup throws.
No, I need like a 30-second ritual before I can even get going. Whereas he was like almost like using that like squatting action like on the way up after picking them. So yeah, I'm sure because he used to get like twice as many attempts as I did. And obviously, like, I have that feeling quite strongly because, like, we practice in the same place.
Maybe it's good to do one session where you take longer breaks and one session where you don't. And the session that you have, you take shorter breaks between each attempt. That would be more of a strength session where you're not aiming to peak. You're just aiming to get stronger.
Yeah, I think it is definitely super interesting in, like, what you, I guess, want to achieve. Like, I don't know if I can use running as example. I'm really sorry, but like in sprinting, like people do training like 4 or 5 by 60 meters all out with like 10 minutes recovery. So Erik was talking about, trying to get like a good amount of time juggling in, but there are people that in order to get the absolute physical peak of like power and speed, running for 6-7 seconds and then spending 10 minutes just sort of sat around. So I guess like, the problem here is that in sprinting, like you only need to get one attempt and it will be successful. You'll get your time or whatever. Whereas in juggling, we still need to fluke and catch 14. So obviously, depending on how much excess strength you can have, you probably want to get as many attempts as possible, which I understand is like the big difference. But maybe like it really just depends where your like your limits are. Because I mentioned earlier, like I think, let's say 12 or 13 balls is like more of a strain on my body than, let's say, Dan. So I think, again, to have like a valid attempt, it just really required that slightly extra time. Whereas someone like Alex Barron, he had like the excess strength actually to do 13. So at that point, why not take advantage of like being quicker and stuff? And I mean, like, presumably we don't think Eric has literally hit his peak in power and speed and can progress. So in my mind, I feel like until you're really like rubbing against that kind of limit, it probably does make sense to see if you can focus on like being quicker, because I think it would just end up being like better training long term. Because I guess that's like the thing with numbers juggling, isn't it? Where like ultimately, like the thing you're aiming for is probably like months or years down the line, right? And like anytime you go into a session, whilst you hope it's the one where it happens, like ultimately you have to just understand that like it's just the process that you're following, and that if you just keep doing the right thing, you'll hopefully be rewarded for the result you're hoping for.
Yeah. But Dave, you mentioned running, and I actually want to stay a little bit on that topic, because I guess that you are quite used to kind of having a training plan for running, and kind of this idea of having a muscular kind of build-up phase, and then you have a reduction phase, so that you're kind of able to peak your running. And do you think that this could kind of be applied as well in juggling? Would it be beneficial to create these peaks of just training ton and then training very little and then suddenly just having all of this muscular extra power? Or would it just ruin the coordination because of little training the last period? Or what do you think?
Yeah, okay. As in, so like, I guess the fancy word for this is periodization, which is like what's used in running a lot. I know Tom and I have talked about it quite a bit in juggling. Juggling is always the interesting one because, like I said, you are just balancing the difference between like physically having the skill set in order to achieve something and actually giving yourself enough opportunities. Because again, it's not like if I go run a marathon, like I just build the fitness, I get in the shape and I run the race, and it's just about as successful as it will probably be. Whereas, juggling, you can never go quite as all out on that, because like imagine, you do all this phase, you peak for this certain day, and then your juggling coordination just fills off and stuff. It would just be like too much of a waste of time. I guess it depends on like also the scale for periodization. So I would say how Tom structures his week to some extent is already kind of this example of, like you have this deliberate effort of like sort of 13 balls, say, or like really high numbers, like once or twice a week, and everything else it structures around. For like trying to flash the most, maybe it makes sense. I think if you were trying to like, if humanity was trying to peak, like let's say we're trying to get some of the flash 15, 16 balls, whatever, maybe we would need to start taking the approach of let's build all the strength, all the coordination, all the grip, all the everything, and then like properly taper down, have like this, like almost like competition period where you're like truly peaking. But I feel like where we are at juggling, it's hopefully not quite necessary right yet. And it's better just to have like the fractionally, like, well, not even fractional. It's better to have more attempts and them just be at like 98% of natural ability instead of a few attempts or like 1 or 2 sessions at 100%.
Yeah. Because Tom, because you already have a practice, or you have a periodization, if I say it correct in English, but that consisted of, if I got it right, 2 hard sessions, 2 gym sessions, and 2 light sessions, usually spread over 5 days. So 4 days of juggling, and for one of those days it was gym session, and one day just gym session. But have you thought about trying to make a period for, let's say, 8 weeks, for example, instead of just for 1 week?
Like, yeah, I thought about it. I just something, or like come up with something that I'm sure would actually help. It's also difficult just in life to like have an 8-week block that you're confident you'll actually be able to, hit everything on time and everything.
Yeah.
But that's
yeah, you can talk, Lewis.
that's what it takes to be the best, Thomas.
Now I think we want to continue a little bit with a different approach in the conversation. Now I want to talk a little bit about technique differences that you guys can see here between Erik and Tom. So some few things that I really notice. Erik, yeah, one thing is, of course, that you bend down a lot before the first pair. But also, when you have done the first pair and you continue to throw, your knees still stay a little bit bent. That's the same for me. I still have them a little bit bent when I go for the numbers juggling. Whereas you, Tom, you go all the way up on your toes to really kind of use all of your strength in your legs to maximize kind of the first throws. And yeah, I was just thinking, starting with you, Tom, if you have thought about the approach that you do, especially with how you use your legs, and if you have looked at Erik's technique and thought if you should include some of that technique, or if you think that your technique is superior for you at the moment.
So I have thought about this, like as a general, like how coordinated should your body be? How deep should you like squat down? Should you go on your toes? That kind of stuff. I wasn't aware that Erik. So is Erik still like all of his foot is contacting the ground when he's releasing?
I think so. I think that's what I noticed.
Shallow squat. Okay, that's interesting. Because then it's almost like he's using like the lower part of the kind of explosive leg movement, and then I'm using like a higher part. Which like at least it sounds like if you can get the same amount of explosiveness, it's probably more of your foot is on the ground. That does sound better. But I don't know. I don't feel like I could do that with the same level of explosiveness. Just like the kind of lower part of the squat. Maybe it's something I could play around with. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but Erik, do you feel like it would be beneficial to stretch your legs out even more, or do you already feel like you have enough strength?
Well, I actually, it was happening almost automatically a few times that I was almost getting up on my toes like Tom. When I started doing 13 as an example, started practicing it properly. But I felt like I lost the balance when I did that. So that was something I quickly tried to get away from because it wasn't working for me. So it's very important for me to always have, the whole base of the foot on the floor all the time. And also, what was the question again?
Yeah, kind of, if you think you would get any benefits from adding more of Tom's technique to your juggling, or if you think you should keep it the same because you already have the power.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I was getting into a path pretty similar to his technique, and it wasn't feeling great in terms of balance and stuff. So I don't think that's something that would be beneficial specifically for me, but I can imagine that there are a bunch of other people around the world doing juggling that could use this technique to get far. Like we've seen Tom, he's a living legend in juggling, and he's doing this technique. I mean, maybe that's the best one. I have no idea, but I feel like the way I'm bending down, that's working very well for me. So I think that's the way I'm gonna continue.
Yeah, because we also we have seen before, Alex Barron, I think, does it as well. I think he goes on his toes on one of his feet, if I'm not mistaken. So he's also kind of stretching himself out. But Dan, you have also done some 14 ball attempts. And when I looked at your technique, I saw it was way more bouncy in a way. So you kind of really used all of your body for every single pair. Whereas whereas with Erik, it was really the first pair, and then he just stayed down and just used his arms. So I'm wondering then, since you already have this particular technique, which seems to work for you in terms of getting the power, would it be a struggle for you to go over to async, where you don't really have the opportunity to bounce as you do with sync?
Yeah, well, I do a lot better when I'm doing sync pans. I think I'm disproportionately good at them, and it's probably due to that technique. But I don't see where you get the power from. I don't know how Tom does it, so I don't know where you get it from, because I see that Erik can get the power at the start of watching his 14 ball attempts, that he can get the power from his legs, but then, as we saw, they tend to tail off in strength as you get further on, because you're not going to squat again during your attempt. I realise that you've said recently it's got higher, but I haven't seen those attempts, so I'll be interested to see what's happening there. But I get most of my, the extra strength in addition to my arms I get through my core. So you're right, I do springing. But yeah, I can't see where you get it from in async without doing that. Maybe you just have to rely on arm strength, and that's how Tom does it.
Yeah. I'm wondering, what balls do you guys use? We could start with Dan. What balls do you use?
So I use flying clipper up to 9 or 10, and then rag bags up to 13, and then Barnsley bags for 14. I switch for 14.
Wow.
Tiny.
3 different ones.
They used to belong to Ben Beaver. Tiny ones.
Oh, yeah. Cool. What about you, Dave?
Oh, I was looking forward to this. Dan uses Juggle Dave rag bags. I use Dan with flying clippers. I'm now allergic to millet, and yeah, we literally swap juggling balls, and yeah, they're what, like 55? No, they're like 60 gram, maybe, small red ones. And then other than that, because up until 10 or maybe 11, I use these orange ones that I assume are like 75, 80 grams. I think Tom knows. Like 75. Yeah, okay, 75. And then, yeah, I think the red ones are like 60 or 65. I know, because some people use like ridiculously light beanbags, don't they? I can't think his name. The Dutch juggler that also uses absolutely obliterated Juggle Dave rag bags. They're like 40 grams now, right?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Wait, is it Khalil?
Yeah.
Schuller?
Yeah.
What about you, Tom? You use flying clippers or?
Yeah, flying clipper. The same 75 gram ones that Dave mentioned, up to 11, and then slightly smaller 70 gram flying clipper balls after that.
Yeah. What about you, Erik?
I'm using rag bags made by a woman in the US calling herself the Bag Lady. Yeah, I think the weight is 70 grams. I'm not sure about the measurements. I think they are in inches, and yeah, I don't know how that works. So yeah.
The thing with rag bags and like these like millet-y type bean bags in general, it's like they actually lose weight over time, whereas like my flying clippers have not changed at all. So I almost feel like, maybe controversial, but like switching to flying clippers has been helpful for me because it's just made my juggling more consistent. Whereas like with rag bags, it was more like the G-ball era where you'd buy like solid rocks and they would slowly become juggleable over time and then they would fall apart on you. Whereas like with the flying clippers, I feel like I get the same experience every single time.
Yeah, because all of you guys now have not proved, but kind of proved a point I was trying to make. And that was, does all good numbers jugglers just use beanbags also for their lower amount of objects? Because I'm the only one different from you guys with this. I use this Russian style ball, which is a plastic shell ball with some sand within. But when I go for 10 and more, then I switch to beanbags. But what happens then, I think, is that every time I do 10 or more, I'm not used to this particular ball. So I kind of have to relearn the technique every single time. And I'm wondering if this might be the case why, even though my patterns can be really good, I often struggle to catch them just because I'm not used to juggling beanbags. Do you guys think this probably is the reason why?
Does anyone else here use different balls from like 3 to 7?
I had a period where I was using Norwics from 3 to 9 and then doing numbers with beanbags. And I switched for that reason. Like, it just didn't seem like I was doing myself any favors in terms of just like building up consistency and stuff.
Because again, like back in, you know, the like 2010s era, I think it was really common to use something like big heavy G balls up to like 7, and then switch to rag bags, like these light, small, tiny things, numbers higher than that. Whereas, yeah, inspired by Tom, nowadays I just use the same 75 gram from 3 to 10 or 11.
Interesting.
I feel like that's actually probably helped my, especially like 8 and 9, or like 10. I feel like those kind of numbers have like really improved from it, because like you say, I am just like used to those beanbags all the time. Whereas like I used to have a fractional amount of practice with them. Because most of my juggling was just with G balls. And then,
Yeah, I really think it's the way to go. It's like, okay, maybe your up to 9 ball juggling could be better by using some other balls. But I really think sticking to more or less the same feeling ball would be beneficial for when you actually go for the higher numbers. I think makes sense.
See, that's what I used to believe, and that's why I did it. But then, like, literally, Tom, just watching him dominate 8 and 9 balls compared to most people has also convinced me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's
actually
true.
Just had really great control with the same beanbag from 3 to 11.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got 51 catches of 10, right? So, like, has to be
He
someone.
really has. Yeah, as you said, it's maybe not numbers anymore to juggle 10 balls, which sounds just so silly. In terms of other numbers jugglers that we have kind of up and rising, we have some different ones. At least I want to mention like Siler Buckner, who is really, he's really up there. Dylan Tweed as well. And then also, I don't remember his last name, but he was at the BJC Numbers Juggling League this year. George, I think, is his first name. Do you guys know his last name?
I don't know.
No.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, but what he did, I think, let's see, last year he was able to flash 10 balls on stage, and it was his 4th time or something. And this year, he was able to flash 11 balls in competition, and it was his first flash ever. And it just,
Nice.
yeah, I just really wanted to mention that because it just, it's so amazing that actually getting the adrenaline sometimes can make your performance even better. I really understand it with running and with strength training and all of that, but with juggling, for me, it really makes it more shaky. But if you can manage that adrenaline in a good way, it probably could help, as we saw there. But Erik, I'm wondering, because I think it's mostly, especially Siler Buckner and maybe also a little bit Dylan Tweed, who kind of are kind of your companions. All of you guys are kind of pushing from the same level to go further. How do you think having those jugglers have helped you to motivate yourself and push even harder?
Well, I think it's thanks to them that I've gotten this far, you know. I have no idea if, you know, I would have had this interest and motivation for numbers if it wasn't for them. Like Dylan Tweed was my, you know, getting into juggling. I think back in 2018, I saw Luke Burridge doing the top 40 jugglers of the year, and he got in and he was like just 14, had recently flashed 12 balls, and he was like proving that it was possible for a young kid to get that far, and I felt kind of inspired. So yeah, I started texting to him. He was really nice, and we've been having contact ever since. Like back and forth about, you know, advice in different tricks and stuff. So he's been like a role model from the beginning. And well, Siller Buckner has been more like a rival because, well, when he started doing numbers properly, I was not this young beginner anymore. Like, I was more challenging Dylan Tweed at the time, so he kind of became another rival to me, and now we are mostly like pushing each other to, you know, to the limits. And well, he's inspiring me to keep going, and I hope I can inspire him too. Like, I think we are motivating each other very much, and I think that's very beneficial for, you know, getting as far as possible.
Amazing. Yeah, it's great with some healthy competition to really keep it going. Like, you want to beat that other guy, but at the same time, you root for him when he does something amazing, which I feel like you guys have been a great example of, to watch, that you share each other's videos on stories and really applaud each other. And if it happens like that, I think having competitions is a really good way of kind of pushing ourselves even further. All right. So mainly in the video with Eric and Tom, we saw a lot of the specific juggling of Eric, whereas with Tom, it was more this weekly structure that was kind of in focus. But I'm wondering, Dave, are there anything particular in his specific juggling, his technique, that Tom should consider for the future if he wants to actually accomplish his goal of a 12-ball qualify?
Oh, okay. So I was going to say, because I think if Tom, I'm really sorry, I'm going to answer a slightly different question first and then hopefully move into it. I think if Tom wanted to, let's say, flash 14, then I think he needs to let sort of the perfectionism go a little bit. So for instance, when Eric like squats, or like same with Alex or me, or when Luke Davis like does async and like it's basically the first two throws are at the same time, like all of that is just creating like the extra like strength buffer. Whereas obviously when you start talking about qualifying 12, like you're never gonna get a 12 for qualify if you don't just have the correct heights and pattern. Whereas again, when you have a flash, like fundamentally, like they can like die off a little bit, right? Like it makes it harder to catch them. With 14, that's probably a problem, but like ultimately you still could get it. Yeah, so I think maybe like if Tom is like in a lot of ways, when especially like used to be attempts in 13 and stuff, be maybe holding on to like high standards a little too much when you start getting to like the very top. As for like training structure for 12, I mean, again, like Tom and I have talked about it a lot. I think his training at the moment, like his weekly structure, is very good for like 10, 11, 12. And then again, like I know we mentioned earlier, like maybe it makes sense to have like longer periods where you do something slightly different and then like taper off a little bit so you have slightly better, more fresh attempts. But I think ultimately, I think Tom doesn't need that to get 24 catches of 12. So I think currently what he's doing, just in my opinion, is probably somewhat close to optimal, because it gives you like enough real attempts, but also doesn't, you know, sacrifice sort of long-term progression. So I think that's kind of my views on like, you know, Tom's approach to sort of, especially everything from like 8 to 12 balls, I think is actually like really quite good.
Yeah, Tom, do you think focusing more on the technique side of efficiency rather than the aesthetics would benefit you?
Can I respond to something from Dave said?
Of course.
Yes.
No, I do agree. And like, I think a lot of it is like, when I was first trying to flash 13, it wasn't just to do 13 once. It wasn't to get it the quickest possible. It was like, I'm trying to get a pattern that's like runnable in theory, like it's got all the height going on, somewhat consistent heights. which is like way harder to do than just to get one 13-ball flash. And also when I wasn't prioritizing it, it's like even harder to do it because I don't have the strength, or if I had it, I don't have it 2 hours into my session. Then what was the actual question? Sorry.
If, in terms of technique, if you would benefit from focusing more on what is the most efficient compared to what's most aesthetic, do you think it would really help you excel at your level quicker?
I don't know. I feel like they might be the same thing. Like, your arm has got to travel down what you imagine is the most ideal path. I'm always trying to think about body position and like where my elbows are in relation, like backwards and forwards, whatever. Like the most aesthetic is going to be like perfect rhythm. That's surely the most efficient. I don't know. Like if you don't have the fast twitch kind of muscles to get the speed of the pattern, then it feels like it's got to come from strength. So if we're talking about like be faster, then like you can't always just be faster. I don't know.
Interesting. Eric, I have written down some different things I noticed about your technique from the video that Lewis filmed when he was in Sweden. And I know that it has changed a bit up to now. But still, I want to comment on these ones. Some of these we're not going to spend a lot of time on talking about because we already discussed it. But here it goes. For me, it seemed like you had a lack of power in the previous video. So you were able to always catch the two first, or at least touch them. But the pattern always fell down, and you really had to compensate with increasing the speed like crazy, which in effect would make the catching way harder when everything is coming down at the same time. This has improved a ton, as we probably can see at some videos. Also, I feel like this also have been fixed, and I feel like it was a slight problem before, that when you did the first pair, your legs and your arms, they didn't quite match in terms of the rhythm. So what it felt like for me was that you released a little bit before you were at your ideal point with your legs. And now I feel like it seems like you get the timing way better. So you're able to get way more height with the exact same amount of power from your arms, just because the timing is there. So this, I feel like, also really has changed over the last months.
Ivan?
Yeah.
I am just going to share Eric's recent attempts with everyone else. So
yes,
you can all see it. But you carry on, boss.
Yep. Also, this problem still is a little bit there, but less. And that is that your throws are almost always higher with your right hand compared to your left hand. I'm not sure if you have noticed that, but that's also one thing. And the last one is the bending. We have discussed the bending quite a bit, but one thing we haven't discussed is, let me do this so that people can understand. So when you go and you bend down, you go down with your arms kind of like this, okay? So it's not like this, it's not in the middle, it's not on the outside, but it's on one side. But in addition to that, your legs also kind of go like this, okay? So it's not just like this, but your knees also go to the side, which I'm wondering if it could be beneficial to maybe move your upper body a little bit, if you want to keep it like this, instead of twitching your knees, maybe just try to have more natural leg position. These are all the 4 things that I've noticed. And right now, I just really want you to talk about how has your journey from that video been up until now, and what are your thoughts about these things that I just have commented?
Yeah, well, I mean, to start off, I'd say my left hand has been struggling a lot, especially with the grip. But, you know, that's always the way it is. When I started doing 12, I knew the 6-ball grip in my right hand very well, but not in my left hand. And now it's the same with 7. And I think that explains why I had so many failed releases, and that was because of that I couldn't, keep them together in my left hand, obviously, but also I think that was one of the reasons why I couldn't maintain the height. Like, it was one of the factors why it was getting so much lower, because it's getting a bit mental, I don't know if that's something you may feel as numbers jugglers, but when I know there is a risk I will fail the releasing, I'm being a bit careful with releasing that specific ball. So that was resulting in the second pair getting slightly lower than the first one, and then this was usually a trend going on until the last pair was thrown up. So
I think could I shoot in a little bit? Because during this early period of 14 balls, do you think you would have benefited more from practicing more 12 and more 7 in one hand for a duration of time instead of this much time on 14? Or do you still think the approach you had was the optimal also back then?
I think I could have done more practice sessions with 7 in my left hand. Like, I had already done it in my right hand a few times. So of course it's always beneficial to keep training 7 in your right, even if you have flashed it on several occasions. But I think if I would go back now, I would have told myself a few months ago, like, you should do more practice in your left hand, because that's something I still need to do. And of course, I feel like 12 is beneficial because it's the same pattern in a way, the sync pattern, and you get into the rhythm. I'd say 14 is just slightly faster, but it's like the same principle, the way you're going to do it, as a 12 ball sync flash. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's to become. I have thought about this one thing within juggling that.
Eivind?
Oh, I lagged.
You lagged. Can I briefly ask what Tom, Dave, and Dan think of Eric's new attempts? Just before we move on.
You want to go first?
I thought the first one. Are you going to show them on screen?
I will show them on screen, yeah.
This one looks really promising. I think what Eric's always been really good at is sort of accuracy, such that they all kind of land in the same place, so he doesn't have to wildly throw his arms around to catch them. So it's like he's often struggled with maintaining the height or having the rhythm correct, but then as soon as that gets locked in, then suddenly it seems really possible. I think that's what we're starting to see with that one.
David?
Yeah, sure. So as in the 14 ball flash attempt rather than the 14 ball run.
Yes.
Well, one, I mean, having like the audacity to try and run 14, it's pretty epic, but fair enough. But I mean, it looks amazing. Like, the heights are actually there. It's like, in my mind, if I ever got an attempt that looked like that, I would just be mentally thinking, oh, I've got it. Like, I'm going to be on it. Like, it's inevitable, right? Like, eventually you'll get lucky enough, you'll catch them. Like, it can't. Do you know what I mean? Like, maybe that's the wrong entitled mentality. But, like, it's definitely how I would feel. Be like, yeah, the heights are there, the rhythm's there, the spacing's there. I just have to catch them now. Like,
but I did have that with
like thousands
for about 8 years. So,
but if I've learned anything from like trying to get good at stuff, it's just like blind optimism is just your best bet for anything, right? Like, I genuinely think that's like really helpful, rather than putting any limits. Like I said, if I had an attempt that looked like that, I'd be like, yeah, I don't know when I'm going to get this, but I will get this.
And Thomas?
Just the same, really. Like, I'm really impressed. Like, it seems like all the problems from the mini documentary session have gone and it's like so close. Yeah.
It's very impressive, Eric.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you find it interesting to watch it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I truly agree. It has been a massive improvement, and as we talked about with the other question, like if you started too early, kind of to go that direction, well, maybe yes, but you can also see where that specific practice have led you. And one of the kind of main principles in all sports is to practice specifically towards what you want to become good at. You know, that's one of maybe the main things. Practice what you want to learn. But still, as jugglers, we need to practice at a correct level as well. And I think that's one of the key factors that have made the greatest jugglers that great, is that they're able to practice at that perfect difficulty level for themselves. And I think for the majority of jugglers, I would say they practice too easy. And then maybe those months you were practicing a little bit too hard, Eric, compared to your level. So maybe 12 balls and 71 hand would be better. But at the moment, I personally think you can just grind it out like crazy. Because it really looks so different now compared to then. And yeah, it does. You should continue having some strength training, having some other juggling as well. But it seems like you have most of the elements in place now to consistently get good attempts.
Can I just say there's only been about 3.5 months between those attempts and these attempts.
All right. But Eric, as we were discussing with Denise, so what are your thoughts? Would you consider changing any of that technique, or is that what you have found the most optimal? Having your knees slightly tilted to the side and going on the outside with one of the arms and the middle with the other?
Well, I've been trying both, like both having my arms outside of the knees, but then, you know, when you're getting up to these high numbers, I like to have a pretty thin pattern, not that wide, you know, and it's not very easy to keep it thin if you keep your arms pretty wide apart from each other. So I don't feel like that's gonna work. But then also, I've been trying not to have like one arm in the middle and one on the side, it's pretty difficult to explain, but almost having your arms in front of the knees while...
Wow.
But it wasn't really working that well because I felt like I had to bend almost backwards a bit, and that was feeling a bit scary, like I was almost gonna fall back. And also like my elbows were hitting the knees, so it was, I'd say, you know, from experience, I feel like it's the best way to have one arm between the knees and one arm outside, you know. But I'm open to try different things, you know. So maybe I will find some other way to do it in the future. I don't know.
I can mention that I never go on the outside of my body with my left hand, always in the middle. With my right hand, I never go in the middle, only the outside. Yeah. So it's kind of the same for me as well. But when I'm trying 12 rings, then it feels very weird because of the holsters. So there I kind of have to be in the middle, and this feels strange for me. So I guess it makes kind of sense why it feels natural. But now I think we've covered a lot of things. I'm wondering if there's...
Can I cover one more thing, Eivind?
Yeah.
Which David mentioned on the toilet break we had, that that dance technique is absolutely... Well, how did he want it, David?
You know, we've talked a lot about strength and stuff, but I think like control is like really important. Because for instance, like my right hand does like 6 in one hand like really easily, and my left hand does 6 in one hand pretty questionably. But like, I'm sure if I go and like lift weights or like do a force output sort of test somehow, the numbers will be relatively the same. So it really is just like muscle coordination. I think a bit alluding to like the kind of conversation we just had with Eric in general, with like the arms kind of being like very central, but like the knees almost bending out of the way so that the arms could be central. I feel like that's just the most powerful like position for your body. It's the same with like, I feel like when I first started trying to learn 11, like my arms would naturally be in a little bit of a wide position. It's just not a very like powerful position. Whereas like as soon as you drag them, like, you know, your hands, like my hands now literally, if I try like 12 async, they like sometimes hit each other from just being like so close in the middle, because I just find that that's like how you get like, I'm going to again just call it like better efficiency, because again, like you still get the same amount of like rough force every single time. Like my power doesn't actually just change that crazily between attempts. It's mostly just like my form and technique between, and you know, like that varies just on every attempt or like how they feel in my hands and stuff. But I think, yeah, to go sort of back, yeah, I think Dan genuinely probably has the most efficient form. Another video that comes to my mind is it like Alex Barron's 13 ball flash cleaner. Like look at his hand positions. It's just flawless. Like there's like no wasted extra movement or anything. Like it just looks like the least amount of effort that was required in order to get a perfect looking 13 ball flash. I think that's something that's like maybe somewhat overlooked. You know, we talk about speed and strength and stuff, but it's like actually making use of like what you have. It's actually quite important.
I'm wondering if we can finish up with one last point that also they've discussed a little bit off camera about an athlete called Nils van der Poel and his training. Could you talk a little bit about him?
Yeah, so he's was maybe a retired professional speed skater. When I watched the video with Eric's training, it was like the first person that I thought of. He was famous for releasing a day-to-day, like, I don't know, blog of like everything he did in like the 4 years up until winning double Olympic gold. And basically in his training, he would have like different phases. So like he would build up like base phase or whatever, where he would just do, bear in mind this is a speed skater, he would spend like 8 to 9 months just cycling 6 to 8 hours every single day and just like building these like fundamental like base fitness. And then his logic was that to get actually like race sharp after he built all of those fundamentals, he would just work out the way that he could do his specific goal, which was skating at 5,000 meter world record pace as much as possible. So for him, that was just, he would build this fitness and then he would just do these like intervals at like goal pace or die, like, I don't know, 5 times a week or whatever it was. And he would just maximize the volume of that. Yeah, when I heard that, you know, how Eric's training, it was like the sort of 4 sort of 10-ish to 15 minute, like almost like intervals. It just seemed so like similar. But then it's interesting because like I would say most sort of professional athletes are not training like that. But then it's hard to like overlook it when, you know, he's literally the world record holder and double Olympic gold medalist. And like obviously Eric's now, you know, at the very top end of high numbers. So yeah, I just suppose comparison between the two.
Yeah, it would kind of be like seeing someone just boxing towards a kind of punching bag, and that's their physical training to build up their strength and everything that they need, and then they have a period where they just go for 14 balls. You know, in our heads it doesn't make sense at all, but and of course it's not what Eric is doing, but it's very comparable in many ways without the build up phase though, which is important to mention, but still really interesting. But I think we're going to end up there. Both Eric, if we can see him there, and Tom Whitfield, we are going to follow these two guys around for all of the next episodes within this first season. to follow along on their progress and hopefully catch them when they actually accomplish their goal of a 12-ball qualify and a 14-ball flash. If you guys found this interesting, please comment a lot of stuff. We're going to read everything. We're going to read all of the DMs that you send us, all of the suggestions, everything. We really want this to be a community thing, not just a Eivind and Lewis thing. So please participate to make this thing as great as possible. I think that's it, Lewis.
Amazing, Eivind. You're the best, man.
All right. Thank you guys so much for participating in this interview, and also especially to you, Erik and Tom, to participate in this video documentary, if we can call it that, and all of you guys at home for watching. See you guys in the next episode.
Bye, everyone do this. No. Good. Nice.